Hey, before we do anything else, we have to thank our sponsors, Smile Traveller, who have not only sent me to Barbados, which is very lovely, but also decked me out in this extremely fashionable cap.
Yeah, no, Smile aren't just good at making George look good, they're also specialists in worldwide sports travel. And this winter, they'll be taking England fans to the Caribbean for an exciting white ball series. Hello and welcome to Ask George, your opportunity to quiz your favourite correspondent from the cricketer and our chief correspondent, George DeBell, our man out in the Caribbean. And we're going to reflect on England's win over the United States, their progress to the semi-finals and what may follow for the remainder of the competition. George, you've been putting in the hard yards, walking the beaches, tasting the cocktails, soaking up the sun. You keep protesting that it's raining all the time. I've seen no evidence of that. How do we find you on the morning after the morning before?
A little delicate, if I'm honest. There's a lot of cricket, though, isn't there? And I don't have cricket on my TV, so I have to go and watch it in a bar. And if you're in a bar, you can't just use their facilities and not give them anything. So it seemed polite to drink lots. Again, just taking one for the team, so you don't have to do it.
Yeah, no,
And it has been
good
it's been
choice.
pouring with rain in Barbados anyway. We were quite lucky with the game yesterday. It rained a lot before. It's rained a lot since. Anyway,
Good. Glad you're being a good tourist. Let's kick off the questions then, and we'll start with innocent bystander. A very simple one from them. Shall we park hashtag Mott out for at least one more game? Good to know that the hashtag is staying in the draft, so that by the sounds of it. But yes, should we park the imminent criticism of Matthew Mott for a couple more days, George?
sure, except hear me out. If England get knocked out in the semi-final, they'll have played four games, I think, against full member sides and lost three of them. It wouldn't be great, would it? So I've never been part of the Mott out or Butler out camp. But equally, just because they're in the semi, let's not pretend everything's perfect, because it has been a bit of a freakish ride to get there. Um, so, who I know quite well, thinks the media, and he's probably right, are too reactive and harsh and demanding, and that is probably fair. But I do think we have to acknowledge that England have smashed associate sides, yeah. But actually, I don't really think we know how they play against the better, bigger teams because, they've had three games so far and they've only won one of them. So I don't know, where does that leave us? It leaves England in the semi-finals, but where does it leave us in terms of evaluating their performance to this point? What I would say is England could still win it, at which point Mott becomes completely safe. And I don't see English coaches aren't sacked very often in cricket anyway if they reach semi-finals, surely. It does feel like Mott in particular has done quite a good job at this tournament. Mott and Butler, actually. The training looks good. I've said that since the start. It looks energetic. They look united. They look confident. I don't know. There's quite a lot right about this squad. But, they're in the semi-finals and it feels like they had quite an easy ride to get there. Is that fair? Is that too harsh?
On a similar theme, David Thomas asks, have England been a smidge lucky to make the final four, or are they peaking at the right time? Classic tournament classic tournament phrase. That one from Mr.
Yeah,
Thomas.
funnily enough, I'm writing a piece after a conversation with Liam Livingston, and he said almost exactly that. And these phrases are largely meaningless, aren't they? Peaking at the right time. What does it mean? England have been a wee bit lucky. I think that's fair. I mean, just look at the game last night between South Africa and West Indies. If South Africa had lost, they would have played seven, won six, and be out. That's very harsh, isn't it? And as it is, England have lost two against full member sides, beaten one full member side, and smashed the associate sides apart from one rained off game. So I do think they've had a slightly fortunate draw, but it's not their fault. You can't blame them for that. USA beat Pakistan, so England got to play Pakistan. Sorry, the USA beat Pakistan, so England got to play the USA instead of Pakistan. Well, I think you have to acknowledge that England has struggled sometimes against associate sides in the past. And, if the US beat Pakistan, it shows that they're a dangerous side, doesn't it? And England put them away in some style. So I think all those things can be true at the same time. They have been a wee bit lucky, but they've done a pretty professional job so far. You couldn't really criticise them a lot, but it feels like the next game is going to be more defining. And I think, we don't know at the time we're recording this who it's going to be, but I think it might be India. If you beat India in one of these tournaments, then you probably have the right to be thinking of yourself as one of the best sides, don't you?
Sushan asks our next question. Like Graham Swan in Test, will England struggle to replace Adil Rashid in white ball cricket?
Yeah, of course. I mean, he's been one of the greatest limit overs bowlers England ever had for such a long time. I mean, sort of 10 years of it and more. So, yes, he'll be extremely difficult to replace. There are quite a lot of good young spinners in England. There are some good young leggies, but it's asking a lot to replace Adil Rashid. I hope he's got a few more years left in him. I mean, he's what? You see, that is the wet floor right there. I'm just very keen that this camera doesn't show anyone else's hotel rooms. Because, people are on holiday. Who knows what they could be doing? I mean, they're probably sitting around reading a book, but you never know. Anyway,
they're probably doing their own Q&As.
Yeah. The whole world's doing podcasts.
Interviewing each other.
Yeah. Anyway, God knows what I was talking about. But the best bit is definitely the slippery floor and my tripod falling over.
Speaking of slippery, what do you think England need to improve on in order to have a chance of winning the tournament? That's from JB. That is a seamless segue as you're ever likely to see from maybe your favourite correspondent of the Cricketer. What do England need to improve
on? Well, it depends, because it depends where they play. They've been quite reliant on a few individuals so far, haven't they? And they'll probably need the middle order to fire. But you see, that's a bit simplistic, isn't it? Because in T20, if your openers start well, I mean, Afghanistan have got to the brink of the semi-finals on the back of their openers and their opening bowler. Well, certainly their opening batters, very crucial for them. Faruqi's bowling brilliantly, but obviously they've got some spinners as well who do a good job. But for England, I don't know. I wouldn't know how to answer that question. But the areas that they haven't fired yet, the middle order batters haven't been required to do masses. So they might have some questions to answer, particularly if it's a spinning deck. I'm just still not sure about the balance of the side. It still feels a batter light to me. You get away with it against associate sides. I don't know. They had so many bowling options in the game against USA. Moeen Ali didn't even bowl. None of the seamers bowled more than 3 overs. It felt like Jos Buttler had given himself so much security in terms of bowling depth, which is fine for that game. But I think if they're playing India or Australia, they might want the extra batter, and that might enable Jos Buttler in particular to go a bit more aggressively at the top of the order. I thought in the previous game, it's raining again, you can probably hear, England looked a bit timid at the top of the order, I thought, against South Africa. And I wonder if that even subconsciously was because they know that, I think Joe Faracci was coming in at number 8, wasn't he? And that feels high risk for me. So that's not exactly something they've got to improve, but it's an area I hope they look at before the semi-final.
Is there also an argument that it isn't so much a specific area of the team that needs to improve, but the question mark being over the level that they have to go? They've demolished the associates quite easily, and they haven't won the game. They've only won 1 of 3 against the full members. You look at someone like South Africa, who are such a curious team in this competition, whereby they've probably had the best of the associates play against them, and they've all played pretty well, and they've beaten all the rest as well. They've won every match. Like, is it a case of England's? We just don't know what England's level is at the moment, because the games they've won have been so utterly one-sided. They definitely didn't get the best of Oman or the United States, and the best of them had been earlier in the comp.
No, but maybe they played so well against them, they didn't allow them. You know, Adil Rashid's googly completely bamboozled the American batters. Chris Jordan, though, I mean, he did his job, but he basically bowled full and straight, and that shouldn't really be enough. I don't think it'll be enough against India. I mean, equally, there are probably still questions to answer about the death bowling, but I thought Sam Curran showed good signs. Jofra can clearly do it. And Chris Jordan's willing, and being willing is half the job, probably. But when sides come after them in those death overs, they'll have some questions to answer.
Yeah.
But I think they've done pretty well so far. I think on my timeline, people are often saying, why is Moeen Ali in the side? Well, I think he's on the quiet, had quite a good tournament. I think he's bowled really well. And you know, those middle order all-rounders, such as Moeen and Liam Livingstone in particular, their job is so difficult. They might only come in for a few balls, and so it's never going to look as if they've done particularly well, but they might have had a role. They might have changed the game. So I can't remember which game it was. Was it against West Indies where Moeen came in? He only got 10, I think. But he hit a couple of fours against the left-arm spinners, and it made a difference. It kept the chase on track while Phil Salt was a bit bogged down. And those things don't necessarily come across in stats. But England have a few players who have that role to do around maybe the top 3 or 4 who need to go on and get big scores. But yeah, there'll be days when those players have to stand up and produce a bigger performance, a more substantial performance, and we don't know whether they can really.
Lord and Dhoni asks about that subject. Before the tournament, everyone was saying England's bowling was their one weakness, but has their middle overs and death bowling actually turned out to be a strength?
The middle overs are a strength, aren't they? In that they've got, well, in particular, they have Adil Rashid. So basically, the template is he'll come on in about the 7th over-ish, and he'll bowl 3 straight out and then come back for 1 10 minutes later, really. I think that's been a strength for quite a few years, to be fair. The worry was always the last 4 overs to death, and how many overs you have left from Jofra, and who else is going to do it. And, you know, Jordan's been in and out of the side, which probably underlines the fact that he hasn't absolutely nailed it until the US game. So I don't know. I think it's a bit early to say that it's a strength. You know, when you're bowling against the Namibian lower order or the US lower order, it's not the same as, you know, bowling against Glenn Maxwell in full flight, and that will be the test, won't it? And that's what I mean when you go back to the whole is Mott safe and stuff, and I suspect he is, but let's be honest, I'm not part of the Mott out camp rather, but let's just be honest, they haven't really been tested very much yet. Yeah, they've won 1 game against the full member side. I think it would be disingenuous to pretend that he's answered every criticism and every doubt.
Malcolm Purvis asked our last question, and that is about the crowds in the West Indies have been pretty poor. Are we running out of places to host competitions like this?
I don't know whether they've been poor, you know. I don't know. It maybe depends what you expected. There are some real issues with this competition, not least. I mean, the final is at 10:30 in the morning. I mean, the final here probably should be a day-night game. The pitches, the ball, everything seems to behave better. You know, you get more pace on the ball, a bit of dew, higher scoring, more dramatic backdrop. But we know why this is happening. Equally, the night games here are starting at 8:30. If you've got to go to work the next day, you're getting home at 2. Honestly, it's if someone like Antigua, it's hard to get home from the ground. They built that new ground. It's the equivalent to saying we're going to move Lords and we're going to build it in Dundee. It's far, and the roads aren't awesome. So you have to be realistic about what you expect. And so the crowds have actually been maybe a wee bit better than I expected. The other thing that doesn't come across on TV is that while it rains a lot, it's hot. It's really hot. And you'd be insane to sit out in the sun. So the England game the other day, people were saying there was nobody there. That was in St. Lucia. There were quite a lot of people there. They just were, you'd have to be mad. Yeah. So you can't necessarily see them on TV because the sensible ones are out, are in the shade, and the mad ones are drinking beer in the sun. But even those, honestly, after an hour of it, after 5 minutes of it, the players are struggling as well. It's very difficult. So I wouldn't worry too much about about that side of it. But yeah, there's a serious point behind the question, isn't there? Everything is built around the Indian TV market. And we know why. It's not a completely unreasonable thing. But at some stage, there has to be a bit of balance. And when you're starting matches at 10:30 and 8:30, 10:30 a.m. and 8:30 p.m., I don't know. It's very difficult for the local audience, is what I'd say. So I still think it's a good place to host cricket. I mean, it's a wonderful place. Obviously, it's a lovely, lovely place. I mean, clearly, look at it for God's sake. On a rainy day, it's still stunning. The people here love cricket, generally very friendly and safe. It feels like cricket's important here. I think it's a great place to host this tournament, actually. And World Cricket has a responsibility, I think, to develop cricket and sustain cricket in places where there might be viability threats. So I think it would be disappointing if every tournament was held in India, Australia, and England. But there are good things about all those places as well, aren't there? You know, in England, let's give some credit to ourselves here. Almost every game is going to be a full house. Almost every game is going to have supporters from both sides there. It's brilliant. You know, it does create fantastic atmospheres. At the same time, it rains, and we're not on the same time zone as a lot of where the broadcast money is coming from. So these things are issues as well. But it feels as if the compromise in this tournament has gone a bit far, and for other things as well. You know, like the fact that India know that if they reach the semis, they can Guyana. I understand that the first request for that actually came from the Guyanese government rather than the BCCI pushing for it. But, you know, there is an advantage there. And there are quite a lot of similar things. You know, the fact that Roy Dollard from the Press Association did a story the other day, didn't he, saying that there is a push for the Olympics to be held, the Olympic cricket to be held in New York for the Indian broadcast market. And you can understand that, but at the same time, I don't know, there's a balance to be struck, isn't there? But that, anyway, that's the reason. I don't know what the viewing figures for this tournament have been. I've genuinely got no idea. But it didn't feel too bad at the grounds. And just like, for example, last night, the bars were full. The night before, the bars were full to watch Afghanistan, Australia. Yeah, absolutely full to bursting point, with a lot of local people. And it does feel as if there's a lot of interest there. It really does. I mean, people are talking about it in a way that they absolutely didn't at the 22 version in Australia. Didn't even know it was on, partly because Australia were out before they realised it was on. So we're hosting these things at the wrong time of year. Yeah, it's in the rainy season, clearly. And we're having the games at the wrong times of day. But I do think it's important that Cricket West Indies is nurtured. And I'm really glad they have the tournament here, not just for selfish reasons. And the same, you know, I think the next ODI World Cup is South Africa, Zimbabwe, Namibia. Yeah, that seems like a good thing to me.